or not Abib, but Ab, that the walls were actually breached and the temples were destroyed. That's why we have Tish B'Av. But prior to Tish B'Av, we have Tammuz. Tammuz is a month of reflection. It's a month of mourning. It's one of the months within the counting of the Omar. So, okay, there we go on those. Now we have mountains. Now, mountains, the word for mountain is har. Har. Har is a word that means mountain. The Proto-Hebrew of har means mountain. What do we see within the letters themselves? We've come into two dead ends on trying to figure out, okay, what it means. Does it have any roots? Does it have any definitions we need to consider? What do we look at now in the Hebrew letters themselves? We have hey that we have established means two different things. First of all, we have, where do we see this the first time in Torah? In what? Hine, which means behold. What kind of really cool stuff do we see the hey do in Bereshit 2? Since breathe. So it represents directly the spirit of Yehovah. So behold, when we have the spirit of Yehovah, what do we have left? We have a resh, which means what?
Authority.
Authority. So what are we beholding here in the mountains?
The spirit.
We behold the authority of the spirit of Yehovah. What does the Spirit do? What does the anointing do? We talked about this, I think, in the last parasha, in the parasha Vayikra, that in Vayikra, in the first that in Torah, the word Vayikra, the first word in the parasha, the aleph is small, telling us that he called to Moses in a small voice. And we get an idea that in order to be able to listen, we have to take all of the thoughts that we have accumulated in this verse and put them together to understand that if we are within the Word, if we find our rest in Him, if we establish our oath, then we are in a position where we can hear the small voice of our Elohim, that we are able to behold the authority of the Spirit of Yehovah. Ultimately, what does this do? It says that it landed on Ararat. Ararat. Anybody have an idea of what Ararat means? If you went into the concordance, you pick up a concordance of half-price books. If you have sword, my sword, or whatever on your phone or on your computer, it'll pump it up right away. Ararat, make sure I spell this puppy right. Let me erase the day here, because I think we're done with Carpe Diem. Ararat. Ararat means to reverse the curse. Everything that we've considered so far, it lands and it finds its rest on Ararat. It reverses the curse. Okay? If we consider Ararat has a gematria of excuse me, gematria of, let's see, we have 200 and 200 plus what, 9, and what is this, 1? Okay, so 200, so we have 410, okay? We start to consider a whole bunch of things about 410. I didn't consider anything, but I want you to show you how we start to look at these things and to get an idea, okay, I can take this further because I can take this now into another area, but right now, what reverses the curse? If we take a look at Ararat, well, if we split this in 2, we have the authority of what? The Aleph that reverses the curse. But we also have a part in reversing the curse because it's the authority that we have in making the right decision in Tet that reverses the curse. If we stay on the wrong side of Tet, if we simply stick with the Nachash, if we simply stick with the serpent, the Satan, then we're not really not reversing the curse. We're simply living in the curse. Okay? There's a whole lot more than simply reading a verse and saying, oh, well, on the 7th day of the 17th month, the ark came and rested on Ararat. Just real quick, can y'all sum up, based on what you've experienced here in this little interactive deal, which is kind of interactive?
The relationship with Yehovah that we find as rest, and in that rest we find the reversing of the curses when we do our part.
Very good.
Awesome.
Very good. Anybody else draw any other conclusions?
Pretty close.
Okay, so
Not only do we have our rest, but we have our total completion and deliverance from the curse.
okay. So we have one more verse. Do y'all want to do one more verse or? Okay. All right, let's take a look at it. The next verse says, "And the waters decreased continually until the 10th month. In the 10th month, on the first day of the month, were the tops of the mountains seen." Alrighty. So the waters decreased. The waters decreased. The first word in this phrase is kamayim. The first is, well, it's vechamayim, and the waters decreased, or and the waters. Within mayim, okay? Within mayim. Okay, this is the word for waters. It's also the word for the letter mem. Mem means water. Okay? The Proto-Hebrew pictograph, well, first of all, what does the mem represent? What does the living waters represent? What does the mem represent to us? Okay, so it represents, let's say it represents the word. We have a closed mem that represents what? It represents Mashiach. Represents the anointing. Okay. Proto-Hebrew of the mem is ma. And ma gives us an idea of unknown. Okay? sea, the ocean, back in those days was like us going into outer space. They didn't know what was out there in the sea.
Sure.
Okay? So it represents to them, it represents the unknown. Okay, now we have something decreasing. The word for decrease is hasar. Sar, which means to, it means to either to lack or to want. To lack or to want. Again, now we have an idea that the unknown water, the unknown word, what caused the ark, or what caused the flood? We have the pure rain, which we say is what? The truth of the word, the purity of the word, that's falling down and it's hitting, basically it's hitting, let's just say Kadama, it's hitting the dirt. What happens when this pure rain hits the ground?
Disturbance.
The disturbance, the water becomes muddled. This isn't what drowns people. This water, this muddled word, this lack of understanding, lack of knowledge of the word is what ultimately drowns my stick person. Everybody with me? What happens when we enter into the ark? What happens when we enter into the word? Our lack of knowledge does what? It decreases. It starts to fall because of what? Our want, our desire to learn. Okay? Everybody with me? So if we say, and the waters decreased continually, the word for continually is around here somewhere, halok. Oh, I'm sorry. Halok. Halok means to go. It means to walk. It means to proceed. So if we take the idea of this and we take the root of halok, which is a similar root, it's actually lach, means a way of life. So what are we starting to see here if we say that this is to walk, to go, to walk, to go? Who are we walking with? Who are we going with? If we walk, if we go with Elohim, then we start to understand that our lack of knowledge of the word begins to decrease. And what happens now? John, the immerser, when his disciples came to him and said, this cat Yeshua is over here and he's baptizing a whole lot more people than you are. What are you going to do about it? What did he say? He must increase. I must decrease. So, in this whole idea that our lack of knowledge has to decrease because our carnal mindedness has to decrease in order for the word within us to increase, that changes our way of life, our manner of living, in that we begin to walk with our Elohim. 10th. We again go back to 10th, other than everything that we've talked about 10th so far, what else can we bring to mind in 10th? What do we think about as far as 10?
Power,
Hmm?
power, and
10, we have the yod,
Yes.
okay? Now, if we have a yod, what do we understand about a yod? Okay, we've said that all Hebrew letters are composed of other Hebrew letters, with the exception of the yod. It's complete within itself. What else have we said about the yod? That when our pen touches the paper, what happens? A yod is formed. It's the first mark. We form a letter, in this case, a beautiful, perfectly formed vav, and then our pen leaves the paper. It's the last mark. Yod is the first mark and the last mark that composes everything in the middle. So again, yod represents what? There's the word for emet, truth. No letter can be formed without the yod. No letter can be completed without the yod. Yod is the most used letter in the Hebrew aleph bet. It represents the power and the ability of Elohim in everything that deals with creation. And he creates and he does everything by his truth. So, what is it now that we have to establish our way of life and walk based on what? The 10th month, again, Yom. We said Yom means month, it means day, but it also means, well, Yom Kadosh was month. Okay? But again, Kadosh means what? Anybody remember?
Separate.
Okay, well,
Renew,
Kodesh
repair,
means to
restore.
separate, renew, repair, restore. So, his truth, power, and ability, our way of life, our walking with Elohim, restores us, renews us. Basically, does everything that Yeshua came to do for us. But then we also we saw earlier that Ararat meant what? Reversal of a curse. So, deliverance as well. So, it is our reputation with our Elohim through Yeshua that allows us to decrease in our lack of knowledge so that the Word increases in our life. Our relationship with our Elohim through Yeshua, through His Word, increases in our life. Okay? Everybody with me? Have I lost everybody? Okay. All right. So,
You said the yod was the power and what?
Yod, the
Yod?
Yod. The smallest letter is spelled
Y-E-D.
Yod. Some people spell it Yud.
She says.
But it represents, it's the 10th letter. It represents the truth because it's the first, middle, and last mark of a letter. So we spell the word emet. The first letter of the alphabet is the aleph. The middle letter is mem. The last letter is tav. We put those together, it spells the word emet. So it represents truth. No letter can be formed without it. No letter can be complete without it. So it's the truth, power, and the ability of Yehovah Elohim to act in all things. That truth, power, and the ability of Yehovah Elohim is His Word. In the book of Revelation, Yeshua says, I am the first and the last. In Isaiah, Yehovah says, I am the first, but with the last. There's a big difference there. Because the final redemption had not come. I am the first with the last. That the Tav had not come. And